hit downfield. Wide open and all too easy.
Bring him again on the stop.
Abdul Carter was there to introduce himself. And look at him bounce off tacklers. He's got another touchdown.
There are a lot of guys that are ready to plug in and play, and a lot of guys with versatility.
He is a really good young starter.
Down, quick cross. Higgins, touchdown. Throws back in the end zone. Caught. Touchdown.
He breaks another tackle. Conway down the sideline. Touchdown, Tampa Bay.
I would be shocked if he didn't get big money from someone. Welcome to 40s and Free Agents, your limited series show going all the way to the draft. We're going to talk about Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft 3.0, but this show has been such a hit early. We've already graduated to the media beef portion of our growth. Let's listen to the insiders from our own network who didn't like that DJ was the one breaking some news last week.
Anyway, DJ, you're welcome to Scoop Town anytime.
Or sometimes you're in the back of an Uber the night before the draft and DJ's debating between C.J. Stroud or Will Anderson going to the Texans, and I yell out, how about give them both? And then you take credit for it and you take a little victory lap. I'm just saying there's a little
like
get
that was
back
me.
and forth
That was more me than
sometimes
you.
here.
That was more me.
DJ is the best. Greg is also a person we work with.
Wow, that's a tough one there, Greg. I will say I'm here in Frisco at the home of the Dallas Cowboys, a home of an organization that said they're going to be selectively aggressive. I feel like Pelissero selective memory there with how that went down on the Houston Texans. But I honestly don't feel that bad the way I came out in that, Greg. I thought maybe more of a shot at you there at the end. Someone we worked with, that's a little harsh.
Yeah, no, I would like to actually thank the insiders, the only three men in the industry that could make me look likable in comparison. So we have a big show this week. We're going to go through your mock draft. We're going to talk about picks we liked, picks we didn't. But let's just take a look at the top five to start out the show and how it's changed since your last one. So this time around, we got Cam Ward, number one. That's a flip-flop. Abdul Carter is there now at number two, going to the Browns. Shadur Sanders is up to number three with the Giants. That's spicy. Travis Hunter to the Patriots at four, and Jalen Walker from Georgia, the linebacker, going to the Jaguars at five. Let's just kind of go through some of these changes. I'll give you an easy question first. Yep. Why flip the top two picks?
Well, I think some of it's what you alluded to in one of our previous episodes about the fact that Tennessee really hasn't done anything at the quarterback position, and it's hard to imagine they're just going to run it back with Will Levis. I thought it was a salient point that you made, Greg. I like to point those out. They can be a little few and far between.
Wow.
But I also think that if it's not Tennessee, that it's somebody else coming up to take Cam Ward. It just feels like if you're Tennessee, you're going to take Cam Ward, or you're going to trade the pick for somebody else to come take Cam Ward. You're going to get some assets. You know, it wouldn't make as much sense for them to take another player at one when they might be able to get that same player by trading down to two or three for two teams behind you that could be in the quarterback market. So that's why I've slotted Cam Ward in at the number one spot.
That all makes sense, but all I could really hear there was you pumping me up. I like that the insiders coming after us is bringing 40s and free agents together. Like, I won't even point out that you're the only person other than Aaron Rodgers who still plugs in, his ear pods there,
True story. We got time. I mean, what do we got today? I just did 3 hours of live coverage at the Big 12 Pro Day. So let's go ahead and let this breathe a little bit. This is an Instagram thing. I saw this on social media. Basically told me I'm gonna keel over and die because I have been using wireless headphones all these years. And so I don't know if there's any truth to that science. Scared me enough to the point that I'm plugging these uncomfortable things in. I can tell you that.
Yeah, that's where we are in 2025. You want to get all your news from Instagram warning about brainwaves getting to you.
Yeah.
Myles Garrett was with our friend Andrew Siciliano this week on his podcast for the Cleveland Browns. And he said he had an idea what the Browns are doing at quarterback, and it made him feel better about signing there. I'm just curious, do you think he has any idea? Or what would that idea be? Because to me, the most logical idea there would he be excited about them trading up for Cam Ward unless Kirk Cousins gets him going? In your mock, you have Abdul Carter going number two and pairing with Myles Garrett.
Yeah, I think that there's an interesting choice there. And I've touched on this before with Cleveland, but I tried to flesh it out a little bit more. First of all, You do hear Kirk Cousins' name mentioned, as someone who, I do believe is going to get traded eventually. So maybe they're selling him on a veteran who can come in here and kind of just get the offense functional. And then they could use that first pick, as I had him here, taking Abdul Carter, to give him a big time rusher on the opposite side where, with Jim Schwartz's defense, they're going to line those guys up wide and they're going to let them hunt. And that would be a great fit there on the opposite side of Myles Garrett with Abdul Carter. Now, I do believe wholeheartedly, Greg, they're going to take a quarterback with one of their first 2 picks. So the question is, do you want to take Abdul Carter, if he's there, who's the best, in my opinion, the best player in the draft, for sure the best defensive lineman in the draft, and then pair him up with a quarterback that second tier, whether that's someone like a Jackson Dart, whether that's a Tyler Shuck, whoever your quarterback is. Tyler Shuck is a big, strong-arm guy, kind of fits that division and that climate a little bit. So I thought that would be a pairing versus you take Shedeur Sanders, you come back to edge rusher you get in the second round is going to look nothing like Abdul Carter. So that's kind of the logic behind the way that I went. And I don't know if that's what they explained to Myles Garrett or not, but we'll see. I do think they're going to take a quarterback with one of their first 2 picks.
Well, they famously passed on a quarterback to take Myles Garrett. It was Carson Wentz, and for a couple of years, Browns fans were tortured thinking they missed out on their guy. And now there's some buzz. Actually, Carson Wentz might be the backup veteran option there. So maybe they want to go back to history, and that would say, yeah, take Abdul Carter.
Go back, Greg, and look at the 21 draft where we spent, and trust me, I was part of it. We spent all that time talking about those 5 quarterbacks. They all ended up going, right? You had Trevor Lawrence go. That was Trey Lance. That was Justin Fields. That was Mac Jones. That was Wilson with the Jets. All these guys. We talked about them the whole run up to the draft. And go look at, I think 7 of the top 13 picks have got extensions now. We've seen J.C. Horn. We've seen was Jamar Chase, Waddle, all those guys. Devontae Smith. They've all got extended. The misses ended up being the vast majority of the quarterbacks.
Right, and the only one without an extension out of that whole top 10 or top 12 is Micah Parsons, maybe the best player among them. You got to get him extended.
And then right behind him is Rashawn Slater, who's waiting on his extension, who's going to get one, I'm sure.
So when these mocks come out, and look, I'm glad that you're debuting this here digitally with 40s and free agents, Daniel. But I've already seen, there's all sorts of shows and websites that are basing content off of your mock draft. If you Google it, it's hard to actually find your mock drafts because so many people are writing about your mock draft. And one of the things you're doing that most mock drafters aren't, and when you do mock drafts, it's actual news, is you are moving Shedeur Sanders up at a time when some people are moving him down. We're at a point where we hear from Tom Pelissero, I will give him credit for being first on this one, that Aaron Rodgers and the Vikings is not a marriage that's going to happen, at least not anytime soon. If he wanted to wait it out till the middle of the summer, who knows. But you have the Giants taking Shedeur Sanders at a point where Aaron Rodgers is on the table for them. Is this a case of just they need to save their jobs? And honestly, the only way they could possibly do that is draft a good rookie quarterback and make him look good?
Well, they need to find their quarterback of the future. We start there. And this is a question. I'm glad you kind of brought this up because a common question that comes up when you do what I did in this mock draft is why is Shedeur Sanders good enough for the Giants at 3, but yet not good enough for the Browns at 2? That's a common question, and I can explain it this way. With Abdul Carter being there, I think, as a premium player, premium position, that's a tougher decision when you're choosing between those 2 options. Obviously, he's off the table here for the Giants, no Abdul Carter. The other thing is, sometimes you get these little pieces of information. Some of it's yet to be verified, and this is 100% in that camp, Craig. But I was told by someone, not outside the Giants organization, but someone inside the league that said the Giants had a presence at every single Colorado game this year. They were following Shedeur Sanders around the entire season. So that seemed to me, it's kind of interesting. Now, I haven't talked to Joe Shane or talked to anybody with the Giants to verify that. I'm sure reporters can take the baton from here and see what they can figure out. But I was like, man, they've done a lot of work and a lot of homework on Shedeur Sanders. And at that point in time with the options there, I just thought, man, they would have a tougher sell in terms of passing on a quarterback, I think, than even Cleveland would, because Cleveland comes away with the prized possession in the edge rusher there to pair up with Myles Garrett.
Yeah, and I know jobs are on the line in Cleveland and New York, but the more I thought about and was looking at your pick here, I just think, forget Aaron Rodgers, because to me, it doesn't make sense to bring in Aaron Rodgers and Shedeur Sanders. But that would be a possible option for the Giants if Rodgers chooses to do that, if they choose to do that. It doesn't sound like a decision from Rodgers coming anytime soon. Anyways,
if I'm Aaron Rodgers, though, hold on, Greg.
Yeah.
If I'm Aaron Rodgers and I've got 1 or 2 years left, and he has a couple suitors by all accounts, it sounds like the Steelers and the Giants, wouldn't you want confirmation from the Giants? Wouldn't you tell them, like, hey, guys, I'll come, but I want to try and win right now. So are you going to guarantee me, like, even though you know if you'll get this answer or not? If I'm Aaron Rodgers, you might as well. I'd say guarantee me that you're getting somebody to help me, not to sit on the bench with the 3rd overall pick.
That's fair, and it just seems like a bad idea if you're the New York Giants. And they've made a lot of bad ideas over the last few years, and I think drafting Shedeur Sanders is a better idea because the only path, and I don't think it's going for Aaron Rodgers and trying to win now with him if you look at his tape, he's not holding onto the ball. He's not close to the same athlete that he used to be. The only way to save your job is you have a really good head coach with quarterbacks, and you could go win 6 or 7 games. If Shedeur Sanders looks like the future at quarterback, you can extend out your time in New York, and Joe Shane in that 2024 class, which was very good, has a chance to get even better, and everyone keeps their jobs, and that's a big part of how you make these decisions. Now, we're going to do a segment coming up, DJ, of the picks that, I actually think you did a pretty good job at. But I had to say, right now, looking at the top 5, Travis Hunter to the Patriots. I mean, I don't know if you're just kissing up to me, because this is what I would love. I think a lot of Patriots fans would love this. And would this be a team that you'd see him at receiver? And I'm curious of the other teams in the top 5, like which teams could potentially see him at receiver?
I'm just trying to do what everyone does to Boston teams, which is like you got the Yankees, all these injuries to the pitchers, and now everybody in Boston thinks they're going to win the World Series this year. And now I'm just put this hope out there that Travis Hunter is going to be gift wrapped to them and absolutely fall into their lap. So that's all I'm doing. I'm just trying to raise the expectations there for your hometown team. But, to me, the fascinating thing with Hunter is if you went around to different teams, Greg, how they would use him would be different. And I'll pose this to you as the Patriot homer here. How do you tell Drake May, if you pick him, that we're going to major him in defense and minor him on offense when he's better than anybody he's throwing the ball to? Like, you couldn't do that. He'd be your full-time receiver. And if you want to sprinkle him in on some 3rd downs, to get him on the defensive side of the ball, you do it. But I think their plan would be way different than a team that might have a need at corner. I
agree. I think he would have to be a receiver for them, and then maybe you sprinkle him in at cornerback, see how that works. I'm going to answer my own question.
Starting instructions
you didn't really answer it. Tennessee, I think you could put him, if they happen to trade down and take Travis Hunter, they need a cornerback, they need a wide receiver. I don't really know. Cleveland, to me, he'd make sense at wide receiver as well. He'd immediately be the best wide receiver on that team, wouldn't necessarily be the best cornerback. Giants, you tell me. Jaguars, what do you think these teams specifically, because I don't think he's getting out of the top 4 or 5, where those teams would put him?
Yeah, Cleveland would be an interesting one. I think Cleveland might be the place where he'd have a chance to do a little double duty. He'd have a chance to maybe even maximize himself a little bit more. New England, just because of what they've done with Carlton Davis and already having an elite corner in Gonzalez, that was the easy one, the obvious one there. I will say if he got to 5 in Jacksonville, maybe that's another one where you can pull some double duty there. But, man, can you imagine on offense, Trevor Lawrence, you get out there and you look and you see BTJ out on one side, and now I've got Travis Hunter as a toy to play with and move him around and try and get him the ball as well. That would be fun. That'd be fun. If you're a Jags fan, I would think that would be a fun watch.
I mean, he's getting double duty, at least eventually. You got to give it a shot at some point. This is a guy who's done something we've never seen before. It would be a crime against the football gods if you didn't give him a shot at both sides of the ball. But I get that you start out on one side focusing. Let's go to the picks that I like the most, DJ, that you made. Picks, I didn't hate.
It's funny because it doesn't say that on the screen. It doesn't say picks Greg likes. That would seem to be a nice thing to say. It says picks Greg doesn't hate.
That's absolutely true. Maybe
that.
That's our producer trying to cause even more friction between us. Ashton Denty to the Raiders at 6. Mason Graham to the Panthers at 8. Will Campbell, the tackle, from LSU going to the Bears at 10. Colston Loveland, the tight end, going to Seattle, and Donovan Ezeiruaku going to the Bucks at 19.
Nicely done. Good pronunciation.
Yeah,
you
thank
worked on
you
that.
very much. I practiced. I want to go through these one by one. Let's start with Mason Graham, actually. I just like this pick because on the last show, I kind of knocked him. I wonder, is this really a three-down player? And you took offense to that. And then, fast forward a couple weeks, and you're moving him down in your mock draft. You're listening to me.
No, that's absolutely incorrect. It's very consistent with my take on Mason Graham, who has not had any movement, in terms of my top 50 list, in terms of like a major fall there. I think he went from 5 to 8, so it's 3 spots. And I told everybody this is going to happen with Mason Graham. He's a great player. Everyone has good grades. He is made for the fall. He's not made for the spring. We did not see him work out at the combine. We'll see him at the pro day. But he's not going to wow you on the hoof. You're not going to walk out there and see, this physically imposing guy compared to his teammate, 78 Kenneth Grant, who you see on the video that we're watching right now. I don't think he's going to have long arms. He's not going to be one who's going to just blow it up from a testing standpoint. So, as happens every year with a couple players who are great on tape and they're not built for spring, you'll see those guys slide a little bit. And what happens is they end up, falling to a team that's very, very fortunate to have them. The Baltimore Ravens have an all-pro safety out of Notre Dame that we saw the exact same thing happen in Kyle Hamilton. So again, Greg, some guys, and we'll educate you as we're doing more of these shows year after year after year. You're going to start picking up on this. You're going to have fall guys, and I'm not talking about league majors, and you're going to have spring guys, and that has something to do with where they go in the draft.
All right, jokes aside, is it fair to say that teams view Graham differently, that he might be more divisive? I don't know if this is true or not. I'm asking, do you think that of course there's a lot of teams that are going to agree with you, and you only need one team to be like that fall in love with the film. But are there some teams you think just don't view him as that sort of player?
I won't blanket it with teams because I've talked to different people in organizations, and I know some individuals might not be as high on him as I am, but I would say the vast majority of folks I talk to hold him in very high esteem. And to be honest, like from a draft standpoint, we're not flush with premier, impact guys up there in the top 10. So I think what you're going to see is kind of the consistent, the steady, reliable, dependable players like him. I think they're going to get bumped up a little bit when it's all said and done with the teams that, just they don't want to miss, Greg. We used to always say when I was in Baltimore, Ozzie Newsome used to always say, hey, there's nothing wrong with hitting doubles. We don't need to swing for the fences. Let's get solid, guys. And then a lot of times they end up being more than that. But I think he is a very, very high floor player.
Similar to Will Campbell. So I like that pick because it just seems to complete the theme of the Bears offseason. I think they've come out with a purpose. They've done it in trades. They've done it in free agency. I think their head coach is partly running the show here. At least he has a big contribution of how this is going to look. And Will Campbell being the second offensive lineman off the board, if he is there at 10, that makes a lot of sense to me, possibly sliding right in at left tackle. My question for you is, do you think he's the second offensive lineman on the board? In this mock draft, he is now behind Armand Membu, who's going number 7 to the Jets. Do you think that's like a conventional take now in terms of teams? Do you think he's more likely to go second, or that's just a toss-up?
I think it's a toss-up. I literally think it's a coin flip. I would not be surprised if that went either way. You've got Campbell, who has he started as a true freshman there. All the makeup, the intangibles off the charts. He tested well. It got kind of lost because Membu put on such a show. But Will Campbell doesn't have the length that does scare some people. It's not even really the length. I would almost say it's more of the wingspan, just kind of narrow shoulders, not a real broad guy. And Membu just, as big as he is, as strong and athletic as he is, they're both young guys. I think you could see half the teams have it one way, half the teams have it the other. I do think they go off within a few picks of each other.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. By the way, you're taping, as you mentioned, from Big 12 Pro Day. Can you tell the announcer in the background that's just yelling out?
Yeah, you got mad at me. You didn't answer my question. Well, I can't hear you, bud. I've got the PA guy going nutso behind me.
I thought I was just hearing something crazy. It just shows. There's another one.
Barkley.
It just shows what other shows are out there on site giving you this material. Ian Rappaport, he's on the ski slopes. I have information right now. He's not even working, and we're out here grinding, especially you.
By the way,
Yeah.
kids size skis. By the way, yeah, nobody knows that, but that's true.
Right. It's that little side ski lift that's just like a mini one. It's like you could have even just walked up to the little kiddie hill that you go down. I'm with you there. Colston Loveland, what a pickup this would be for the Seattle Seahawks, who I think need help on offense. You have him falling to 18th. Not falling. That's a good spot.
I'm glad you picked this one. I'm glad you picked this one to talk about because I know, like we talked about it previously too, like offensive line, interior offensive line's a direction you would think makes a ton of sense for them. But in this case, I think, and this is maybe a disconnect between being inside the draft room and maybe what the expectations are on the fan side of things, which is, yes, we might have a higher need somewhere, but you don't pass on what we would call blue player. Like this is someone who I have as a top 7 player in the draft. And do we have anybody? Is Noah Fant going to preclude me from taking a top 7 player in the draft? Not a chance. I'm going to give Sam Darnold a bunch of easy completions here with someone like Loveland. So I think that's, there's times where like, hey, we have a need, we need to fill it. Obviously, you hope to do that in free agency, but you're still going to have needs in the draft. But the golden rule, don't pass on great players, and I don't think they would.
Yeah, to me, he might be a safer pick than Tyler Warren. You can just see what he does and having it translate at the next level. And I also just thought it would be important for them to get like a tight end. He showed us in his last year that he can really catch off-target throws, and that's going to be necessary when Sam Darnold's your quarterback.
Oh, wow. I see. So you had to just get a Darnold dig in there too, man. By the way, are you guys having a party at the Rosenthal household whenever we get the new Geno deal? I didn't know if he was going to pay for that or not. Like, does he pay for balloons and cake that you guys can
It's taken
celebrate?
a while. He does follow me on Twitter. We've never actually had a personal interaction. I don't know. It might be
his social media guy follows you on Twitter. Let's be honest here. Come on.
We have
He retweeted me a couple times. He remembers.
By the way, if you ever send a direct message, because I have again like different people and a lot of times athletes that they'll follow you follow them back, and I think I'll tell you what it was. It was Cooper Kupp, and I'll next time I see him, I'll find out if this is true or not. But my theory is that when you send somebody, hey, congratulations on the new deal, happy for you, hope all is well, and you get back prayer hands, I'm thinking I don't think that's Cooper. I think that's his guy that runs the social media that's just acknowledging like, hey, yeah, I didn't realize I followed you, but thanks for the nice note.
I love the little behind the scenes. And yeah, while we're talking Geno, we might as well talk Ashton Genty. You have him going number 6, and we're still waiting to see that Geno contract. This is one of those picks, Ashton Genty going to the Raiders. And I'm asking you to fight through the noise back there.
Yeah.
That there's a lot of buzz about. I only have so many sources, not as many as the real insider Daniel Jeremiah, but this does seem one that like people think could really happen. Is there any concern if you're the Raiders that so many teams think that?
No, I don't think that you're in danger of having somebody leapfrog you. I mean, that's teams are so paranoid about information getting out and their whole thing. Oh, somebody's going to trade up in front of me. That so rarely happens, that you get connected with the player and then a team will leapfrog you to take them. And especially at the running back position in a deep running back draft. And, Amari Hampton for me is not that far off. I love Genty. To me, I love him as a player, but Amari Hampton's a really, really good back. I can't imagine that if you're, like the Bears, you're going to trade picks to get up ahead of the Raiders to get Genty if you were dead set on taking a running back, you'd have Amari and Hampton waiting for you, or you could even, potentially wait till, your second round comes around and get one of the Ohio State running backs. So I don't think there's danger with that particular team being connected to that player.
Yeah, and there's been some criticism for the Seahawks, trading DK Metcalf away from Darnold, for instance, and not picking up an offensive line. The Raiders don't have a Jackson Smith and Jigba. The Raiders need some weapons on their team. They don't have the running back, certainly.
They got one.
Seahawks have.
They got one really, really good one.
Yeah, Geno Smith.
Brock Bowers. Oh, look at you.
I'm just saying wide receiver, but you're absolutely right.
Brock Bowers is a wide receiver with a T next to his name.
That is absolutely fair. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back, and we're going to go through some of the picks that I wasn't as sure about, as confident about. I want to hear DJ
These other ones you
explain.
didn't hate. That's his nice compliment. Thanks. I don't hate these picks. What a jerk.
The 2025 NFL Draft presented by Bud Light starts in less than 2 months. Catch all 7 rounds, 3 days live from Green Bay, Wisconsin. It all kicks off Thursday, April 24th in primetime on NFL Network and NFL Plus. Find out where all the future stars of tomorrow land. Visit NFL.com/draft for more information. And yeah, they got Jalen Carter's picture up there. They got Travis Hunter's. They should have Daniel Jeremiah's picture up there. He's the one who owns the draft.
Jalen Carter, is that what you just said? Jalen Carter. See, I guess he goes to Penn State now, and he's in this year's draft. The Eagles are going to be very surprised by that.
No one said I'm a draft guy. I'm just trying to catch up.
Goodness gracious.
And yet,
that's why it's called 40s and free agents. The free agents way after the 40s in terms of importance on this sort of thing.
Okay, so let's talk about some players that I didn't think you did as good a job with. I'm going to call this section, What Does DJ Know About Some of These Players?
Do you need me to pronounce them, Greg, or you think you got this one on your own? You got this one?
Good.
Okay.
I mean, I've got Jalen Carter on the brain. He was the most important player on the best defense in the league. Let's talk Jackson Dart. And there's a number of players on this board that I don't think he did a great job with here, DJ, or more that I have questions. But Jackson Dart going 21 to the Steelers, is this a guy that it's more on the evaluation or more what you're hearing putting him that early?
No, I don't know who's playing quarterback for him, and I asked myself a very simple question. Do I think Jackson Dart would beat out Mason Rudolph? And I think he would sooner rather than later. And I also, with Jackson Dart, I've used this before, but he does remind me of Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts, who wasn't a finished product coming out, but when you watched him every year in college, he got better and better and better. They're both strong, sturdy guys. You look at the way they can move around. Obviously, Jackson Dart doesn't move around quite like Hurts does, but he rushed over 1,500 yards in his 3 years in the SEC. He's athletic. So all those things together, I thought, man, you could find some similarities there. And you look at, Andy Weidl's with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was with the Philadelphia Eagles. So I was just kind of putting a couple pieces together there. And more so than anything else, it was like, is this guy better than what we have on our roster at the moment? And the answer was yes.
Yeah, I hear that, and yet it reminds me too much of the Kenny Pickett draft. That there's maybe only so many first-round quarterbacks in that class that there were none. In this class, maybe there's the big two, if you want to put Shadur Sanders there, and then it's forcing a pick up with Jackson Dart. But we'll see. It makes a little bit of sense. They are on Aaron Rodgers' watch, and yet I don't think that would prevent them from looking for a quarterback of the future.
I'm going to see if I can get the PA to turn the volume up a little bit. I don't know if you're hearing that enough. So we are here at the Big 12 Pro Day, and linebackers are running 40s. Literally, we're doing 40s in free agents while they're running 40s. Like, where else you getting that, Greg? Come on.
You are playing hurt today. You're fighting through a double team. I appreciate it, and that's why I feel bad for picking on any of these picks. I'm not really. They actually made me wonder, like, what does DJ know?
They're good questions. Good questions.
DJ knows a lot. What does he know about Tet McMillan here, who has a little bit of a slower 40 time this week? You've had him in your top 20, in terms of your evaluation, so you obviously like him as a player. But you have him 22 going to the Los Angeles Chargers. And I got to admit, DJ, I checked on the Mel Kiper mock draft, which also came out. I don't know if I'm allowed to say Mel Kiper's name.
No, I love Mel, absolutely.
And Tet he was kind of low on his mock draft too, so something's happening here. What's happening with Tet McMillan?
Well, a couple things. Like, he ran his 40 the other day. Now, this is a public service announcement. Don't believe the times that you get from or he's at pro days, unless you get somebody who's talked to a scout who was there. Because the times we were circulating were in the 4.4s, and I talked to 5 or 6 different teams, and I didn't get anything from that. I got anywhere from the range of 4.53 at the low end, all the way up to one was at 4.63. But the most consistent ones, and the ones that got circulated to all the different teams, was the 4.53 number, which is a good time. It's a solid time for a guy who's 6'4", 219, 220 pounds. But historically, Greg, I always try and remind people, when you're doing mock drafts and you're talking about ranges of where guys can go, I'm not saying what type of player he's going to be. But the last time we had a receiver run in the 4.5s and go in the top 15, you got to go back to Mike Evans in 2014. So historically the league doesn't take wide receivers that lack, that top speed. They historically don't go in the top 15. And when you have Matthew Golden, who's got really good tape at Texas, who ran a 4.29, we'll see what happens with Ibuka. He was a tough one for me. I think once he runs, I think he'll run faster than people expect. I didn't have him in this last mock draft. I think he'll come right back in once he shows everybody and verifies the speed that he has. So it's different flavors with receivers. I think it's possible. Maybe it's not likely he gets all the way to 22, but I think it's absolutely possible.
Now I know you respect Mel Kiper a lot, but are you checking out his mock drafts just to see, or are you kind of Don Draper in the elevator? I don't even think about you, Steve Campbell.
No, I love Mel, and ours came out the same morning. So, you turn those in, and then you just kind of see. So I always see it, is curious to see if there's any new names that pop up in there, because a lot of times, that's coming from somewhere. It's not just, what you're seeing. He does it similarly to the way I do it in terms of talking to people on mock drafts. You rank them off your eyes. You do mock drafts a little bit more off your ears. So maybe there's somebody that's catching some buzz. Maybe I can do my own homework on that. But yeah, I love Mel. I always love checking out Mel's stuff.
Okay, I can't get you to take down Mel. He's no Ian Rappaport.
I was in Mel's book. I used to work literally while I was in college. I was working on the draft with Chris Mortensen. I got to go out to dinner with Mel. I got to meet Mel while I was in college. In my senior year, he had no business putting me in the book. He put me in his draft book as, I think priority free agent would be a kind way to say it. But I did make it to Mel's book that year.
Oh, I didn't even get you were in his book as a player. I thought you were just helping him out on the scouting
App
side.
State.
I didn't know you played football. That's cool. You should start podcasting too.
That is tough. That is tough.
I just wanted to throw out a little bit of news for our listeners. Cam Robinson signed with the Houston Texans. Now, it is a one-year deal, so I don't think that would necessarily prevent them from taking a tackle. You had him going Kelvin Banks, who plays the same position, but again, I don't think that would prevent them from taking a tackle for a one-year pickup for Cam Robinson. But that was just interesting to me. I noticed Shamar Stewart, who blew up the combine, is number 32 in your mock draft. Yeah, the Eagles taking another big, strong, fast guy. Just interesting that maybe he didn't get the bump that I would have thought coming off that combine performance. I mean, we had some people, I'm not going to name names, asking, could this guy go number 1 overall after the combine? You have him at 32.
Well, I don't think that we know where he could go. He's one with a very broad range. I will just say I was in the combine up in the booth next to Rich Eisen when Nolan Smith ran in the high 4.3s, low 4.4s or whatever he ran out of Georgia, but someone who didn't have, a ton of sack production. And what happened to Nolan Smith? He fell into the lap of the Philadelphia Eagles. History has a way of repeating itself, Greg. So that was kind of my thought process there. The production isn't there. The disruption is. He's very disruptive. You can see on the clips that we're watching as we're talking here. He's got big time speed that you see when he's working out. It also does translate to the football field. He just hasn't, he hasn't been able to rack up the sack production, hasn't been a great finisher. Something that I think there's more out there for him. I think he's going to get better in that department. But if you told me that he was the 9th pick, 10th pick, or he was the 32nd pick, it's kind of one of those drafts where he's one of those guys with a very wide range.
Okay, so DJ's not standing on its 2 feet. He has his big mock drafts that comes out right before the draft. I think he'll have the best information there. So I like hearing that on Stewart. Matthew Golden, number 12 overall, I just thought was a little wild. In this scenario, there's no Ashton Jeanty on the board for the Cowboys, but man, his 40 maybe helped him out. What's the thinking there? That was one where I was like, wow, does DJ know something that Golden would go that high, first receiver off the board?
Yeah, he's my first receiver, so that's how I have him stacked. His tape is really good. This is someone, if you think about Texas, he transfers from Houston, goes to the University of Texas, and in 1 year establishes himself as the guy that your quarterback in Quinn Ewers and your play caller and Steve Sarkisian trust more than any. Why do I say that? Because when you're in a playoff game against Arizona State and it's 4th down and your season is on the line, that's where the ball went, and he saved their season. You see one-handed catches when you watch him. He's really, really strong. I go back to the Les Snead line that when I talked about receivers many, many years ago. Maybe not many, maybe 3 years ago. And they've had such a good job of hitting on wideouts. I asked him one of the things that they focused on. He talked about guys that are grounded through the catch, guys that run through the ball. They trust their hands. They don't gather. They don't leave their feet. They run right through the ball with their cleats in the ground, and Golden does that really, really well. And then on top of that, a little sprinkle on top of the Sunday, he ran 4.29.
Right, and the Cowboys have a massive need there in terms of their second receiver.
How about CeeDee Lamb? I mean, you get him over the top and with that speed and the ability to make things happen, and you free up a little space for CeeDee Lamb. That'd be a fun pick.
No, I gotta admit, I don't hate that one. That was one I just wanted to know a little more. What's going in behind this week? As you said with Mel, DJ's hearing all this stuff. Let's look at some of the new names, just to kind of go over who was added from the last version. New additions from the last mock draft. Donovan Ezeiruaku, I mentioned, Jackson Dart. Maxwell Hairston is new. He's at 23 to the Packers. Nick Imenwari from the South Carolina is at 24 to the Vikings. Trey Amos was added. Mississippi cornerback Derek Harmon, the defensive tackle from Oregon. And then the cornerback Ezeiruaku Thomas from Florida State at 29. Hairston is a guy would be very interesting for Green Bay. We don't know what the future is for Jair Alexander. Do you think he fits kind of what they do as a team?
Can you go back to Thomas's first name? Can you pronounce that one more time for me, Greg?
I didn't realize. I don't know why I felt like I needed to say every name there. I didn't need to.
We have linebacker.
I just saw you were showing off at some point in time. I was like, I'm Greg. I just heard this name 20 minutes ago. Let me really try and practice the pronunciation.
I mean, you pretty
I was impressed. I was impressed with it.
Azariah. That was worse. I don't know why I kept talking.
You were better the first time. That's why I didn't think you had any chance of repeating that success. You know what I mean? That's why I wanted to get that on the record. What was your question again? One more time.
It was about Hairston. And also, I actually was a little surprised. Starks and Imenwari, you still have Malachi Starks so far ahead, despite him blowing up the combine.
But between
those two defensive backs, who catches your eyes?
Yeah, let's first of all on Hairston. The Hairston ran really well. Hairston in 23, fully healthy, played a whole season, had 5 interceptions, made tons of plays on the ball, tested extremely well. Obviously, he's a freak in terms of the explosiveness. Wish he was a little thicker, but he's someone that can find and play the ball. He's got big time speed, and he's willing. Some of his tackling wasn't as good this year because of the shoulder injury, but you go back to 23, I felt more comfortable with it. Had a good Senior Bowl, so he's had a good process. So that's why I had him going to the Packers in a team with Jair Alexander's. I think we'd say his days are not long there. So that's what made sense to me. And then in terms of the two safeties, Malachi Starks, I'm telling you, I have not heard one person that interviewed him or talked to him at the combine from a team that didn't love him. Not like him, just loved him in terms of the intelligence, the ability to communicate what he sees going through his tape, the leadership, the background information they've got coming out of the school. So he's a real fluid, smooth athlete who can play as the free safety. He can cover in the slot. You're going to be a little bit better in coverage in the slot. Imenwari's a big, hulking dude. He's not going to be quite as nimble to redirect like that. And Imenwari worked out great. He makes a ton of plays on the ball, kind of buzzing underneath things, kind of as a floater, and is going to be an excellent blitzer. I mean, he's a phenomenal player. But I just think with Malachi Starks as someone that teams, coaches, personnel guys that have met with him, there's a lot of love for him out there.
Yeah, Starks to the Dolphins, I should have mentioned at 13.
With Holland gone, yeah.
That's a fun fit, but man, Imenwari to the Vikings. I just as a fan, I want to see that with Brian Flores, and you
cut him loose and let him blitz. He might have 8-10 sacks next year if he went there.
You're making fun of me for the pronunciation, and you should, but I take this seriously. I'm going to self-scout. I'm going to improve from this week to the next, because I hate it when people are making jokes about not getting the pronunciation right. Like, John McEnroe has no idea of these guys' names who are in the top 30. It's your job. Learn the names. Do better. I'm saying that to myself.
Way to criticize one of the legends of the game. I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, come on, McEnroe. We're going to go after McEnroe at this point.
He's a great broadcaster.
Next.
But he doesn't know anyone outside the top 5. He gets clearly bored by it. Ezeiruaku, I was ready for that name. I just love that fit.
Nailed it.
I could see him as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. He was not in your mock draft at all, and now he's all the way up to 19. It's what they need, a guy who can bend the edge, maybe not as big a player, but some real pass rush skills. He fits to me what Tampa Bay wants to do. Why did he jump so much? Is it just about the team fit?
Yeah, he's in that range on my top 50 list. So kind of where I have him stacked. And he's another one who he knows how to play, knows how to rush. He's got tons of production. He's got long arms, which I love coming off the edge, and had a really solid week at the Senior Bowl. Coaches that were around him there at the Senior Bowl, they really liked him, really enjoyed being around him. And I know, just Jason Light in his background and his history and talking to him over the years, I know he values production. So it's not only just kind of the traits that you have, the long arms, and he loves the fact of, historically guys that know how to finish and can win and get the job done and finish with sacks, and that's what he does.
Yeah, just a couple of players we haven't mentioned. There were players that were on your last mock draft that are no longer with us, at least in this show.
Jeez, don't say it like that. Goodness gracious, they're still alive, Greg.
Yeah, don't you feel bad? Cue up Bone Thugs and Harmony Crossroads here. Pour one out. Walter Nolan, he was 12th on your last mock. He's no longer there. Tyler Booker, the guard from Alabama, he was at 13. He's no longer on it. And then some guys that were towards the end of the draft, like Amika Buka, who you had at 25 before. Travion Henderson was at 24. Darius Alexander. Does any of these names stand out to you, DJ?
Yeah, let me give you some information. So this is literally as we're doing this in the stadium in Frisco with the Big 12 Combine. That's the voice you're hearing in the background as they're finishing up their workout. But Alabama had their pro day today. Booker did not have a good combine, actually really poor combine in terms of the testing. His 10 time at the combine was a 196 for his 10 time, and then he was 187, I believe, today. So that's from guys who were there at the pro day. So much better for him. Definitely helped himself with that performance. Yeah, his 10s were 191 and 187 in his two runs. So I think Booker he'll get back in. He'll get back into the latter third, I would say, of the first round. Walter Nolan, again, there's some of those guys, Shamar Stewart, Walter Nolan, there's opinions all over the map on these guys. So again, it's that type of a draft, Greg, where you can see boards stacked so differently, more so than any other year. Normally there's kind of these are the top 15 picks. I don't know how they're going to come off, but these 15 players are likely to go in the first 15 spots. This year, there's nothing like that.
That makes it more fun. It also makes it great for people like me who like the mock drafters to just go up in flames. A little Schadenfreude. I think you're gonna be
have they ever not you get celebrated on a mock draft if you got like 10 guys out of 32? That's a heck of a mock draft.
That's fair. Yeah, and you had last time, and this is how free agency affects things a lot. You had Travion Henderson going to the Vikings. Now they get Aaron Jones. They trade for Jordan Mason. It is clear Travion Henderson,
that's out,
who's a great player, but that fit is absolutely out. And then you're looking for teams towards the back end of the first round. Not as many, I think, that would take a running back. Let's look at the biggest risers. This is our last graphic. If you are watching,
first of all, yeah. Do you find it funny that I think we're signed up to do 10 shows?
Yeah,
and it's the two guys, right? And we're going to 40s and free agents, like the draft and free agency. We're going to do 2 of the 10 shows on free agency and 8 on the draft. I mean, I don't know what that says, but
we're talking about the marriage of the two. I just brought up some Cold Stone awesome info.
No, and it was
nice
trade. It was nice, as we're 3/4 of the way through the show for you to contribute. I appreciate it. That was a good nugget. I appreciate
Cam
you
Robinson was another thing. He was a guy who I think I might have rated too high. I listened to you. You say push those offensive linemen around earlier. I kind of did that in my top 100, and Cam Robinson was in my top 30. NFL teams did not agree with me, I don't think, but he did get $12, $13 million.
He's going to be He's going to be starting left tackle. He's going to get decent money. That's not bad.
That makes me feel better. Let's look finally at the biggest risers from your previous version. Jihad Campbell all the way up to number 9 from 29. Malachi Starks, we mentioned, went from 32 to 13. Matthew Golden up to 12. Genty from 21 up to 6. And then Ezeiruaku, a lot of the guys we mentioned, up all the way to 19. Campbell to the Saints is really interesting to me. Here's my question about the Saints, and maybe you're not in position to answer. I don't know if you are or not. Who do you think really has the juice there in the building? Like, and on one hand, I want to think, okay, Kellen Moore, new offense, we're going to have a new approach, new defensive coordinator, Brandon Staley, all this stuff. But then I look at what they're doing this offseason, and it's just like, oh, yeah, these are the same old Saints. Mickey Loomis is a very important person in that building. So when you're making these picks, for instance, Jihad Campbell, like, are you thinking about what the old Saints would do or the new Saints? I want to know who has the juice in that building. That's just a bigger question that I have.
Well, I mean, ultimately Mickey does, but I do think that as a first year new head coach for the Saints, I would think they're not going to do anything that Kellen Moore doesn't want to do. So I think a lot of times people ask that question, like, who has the power? And I'll say, well, I've never worked for a team where we took a player in the first round that our coaches didn't like. So even if we might have higher grades on the personnel side, there's enough guys to pick from. We can find somebody that we both like. So I think that is a little bit more of a collaboration. Now, the interesting thing on Jihad Campbell, turn that thing in, a few days ago, mock draft comes out. Alabama has their pro day today. He announces at the pro day that he just had labrum surgery, I believe, right after the combine. So he's going to be down for a little bit. I don't think that'll impact, how high he goes. He should have a chance to be fully recovered, but it's the medical part of this thing is something we won't know. So that's something to keep an eye on with him.
Yeah, that would be an interesting pick for them. I guess they have needs everywhere in theory because they don't have a lot of young core players. And so
just get young and fat. They need to get young, fast, and athletic. And I think Jihad Campbell gives them that. And someone who can do a lot of different things.
But if I'm Kellen Moore, like,
athleticism.
I want some offensive linemen. I want some weapons. I want some offensive players. I want a quarterback. And I look at my linebacker position, and they just renegotiated Demario Davis again. They renegotiated Pete Warner again, and those are two good players. I think
this dude can rush off the edge. You could literally line him up as an outside linebacker. He might get you 12 sacks next year. So that's kind of the unique part about Campbell. Oh, he was recruited. He was an edge rusher in high school, was recruited there as an edge rusher. But what do you do when you show up to campus and you've got 2 first-round picks as your edge rushers at Alabama? They're not going to, he wasn't going to get on the field, so they moved him off the ball. And then this last year, he got a chance to rush a little bit more. But he was there with Dallas Turner and Will Anderson. So that's why he ended up moving, off the ball.
Okay, since we're getting into this here, and I know it's a little more draft than free agency, didn't he look like an off-ball linebacker? Like comparing him to Jalen Walker, for instance, who played at multiple positions, and I think you can kind of see, man, that guy could be a Micah Parsons, whatever he's going to be, an explosive edge type of guy. Wasn't Campbell just such a good off-ball linebacker that's where most of the league will see him?
He's taller than Jalen Walker. He's, I believe, longer than Jalen Walker, and he can really rush. Like, he knows how to rush. So yeah, no, he would fit right in. You throw him outside and let him rush, he will not look out of place at all.
We haven't gotten a chance to talk, and you mentioned Cooper Kupp is just sliding into your DMs, or his social media manager is. What did you think of that move, by the way? I'm just throwing this at you at the last second.
Yeah, well, I talked about it last week. I liked it. I thought they would sign Garrett Bradbury as well, which they didn't. He ended up going to New England, but they did end up getting the Cooper Kupp deal. And I want to say that I asked you what you thought the number would be. You weren't right. I said it would be 15, and it ended up being exactly 15. But neither here nor there. I do like the fact of putting smart, sure-handed receiver with JSN, who's a smart, sure-handed receiver. I think you're going to be able to do a lot of different things, be able to read things on the go. People wonder sometimes about that, well, who cares if you're smart? Just run your route, catch the ball. Look, you get guys that can really sight adjust and can see things the same way as a quarterback. It does give you some more opportunity there. You've got 2 guys who've done a ton of work in the slot with him and JSN. I think they'll be able to move them around. Get at least one of them, obviously, more than one of them. We're not in Canada, but get one of those guys on the move to kind of free them up. I like that fit in the middle. They need to get somebody now on the outside, preferably somebody with some real speed. I think they signed MVS, right? Did they sign Valdez-Scantling? Yeah.
Yes.
So that's theoretically that's the complement you need for those 2 players. You need somebody that can get over the top outside, and I had them taking Loveland. So now if somehow that were to work out that way, I mean, you completely overhauled your pass catchers if that's what ends up happening.
Yes, we talked about that as a possibility. I'm doing too many shows these days, but we didn't know for sure. You just knew because you knew more than the insiders know. Meanwhile, Ian Rappaport is out there on the ski slopes, and DJ's breaking it down.
You have any evidence of that, by the way?
I do. I mean, I have
you do?
Photographic evidence. We will play that for you if you check it out on our YouTube. It's there. We're on NFL Network, and we're obviously in your ears. We appreciate everyone tuning in. We will be back next week on 40s and free agents. I will try to carry more of my load here, the share. Let's do it, DJ.
How about just some load, just a little bit, just a little effort. That's all.
I was setting you up, and you were spiking them down.
There you go. Well, you're half right.